Hello, everyone. My name is Darren O'Connell, and I'm the service manager for the Drive project. I'm with my colleague, Paula.
Hi, I'm Paula Hardy. I'm the strategic lead for vulnerability and victims for South Wales Police and Crime Commissioner.
Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to give you a presentation, and the name of the presentation is Defining Boundaries. And we think what we need to be doing is seeking ways to work together to reduce the number of new and repeat victims, to reduce the harm caused to children, to repeat the number of serial perpetrators, and to intervene earlier to protect families living with domestic violence. Okay, so as this slide will show, domestic abuse is really prevalent in the UK. And what we see is a lot of our cohort, they will be involved in more than 2 or 3 multi-agency risk assessment conferences, which is called MARAC. Also, what we see is they're involved in children's lives, and many of them children will be involved in children's services. As you can see at the bottom of that slide there, fewer than 1% of perpetrators receive specialist intervention. Okay, so this is where Drive's delivery sites are. So when we started, the pilot project was South Wales, it was in Essex, and it was in West Sussex. And that started in 2016. So as you can see, we've gone quite further across the country. And in South Wales, we are delivering now in the whole South Wales Police Force area. So that's Cwm Taff, Cardiff and the Vale, Swansea and Neath Talbot, and we also deliver in Bridgend. So this is the Drive model then. So the Drive project and the model is a new response to high harm, high risk perpetrators of domestic abuse. And it's delivered as a coordinated multi-agency partnership. So on the left-hand side there, you will see not an exhaustive list of the partners that we work with. So we work with statutory agencies, we work with non-statutory agencies, we work with charities, and we work with victim services. As you will see at the top there, our referrals come from MARAC, which again is your high harm perpetrators, and every one of them perpetrators is assigned a case manager. But really crucial to this project, and what makes it the project that it is that we have the victim's voice throughout. That is integral to our process. So every perpetrator who's got a victim, that victim is assigned an IDVA, independent domestic violence advocate. So the model invests in work, and what we do is we encourage prevention to tackle violence against women through driving behaviour change amongst those who cause them harm. So our cohort, we have 98% of our cohort are males. As you will see when you come down, you will see diversion support, voluntary engagement, and disruption. So some of our clients, they come to us with statutory arrangements. So it could be child protection conference, and the perpetrator needs to change his behaviour as involved in a child protection plan, or it could be that he is subject to probation. And in that respect, then we will work with that individual. So we normally do, it's called RAR days, rehabilitation activity requirement days. So we would be able to do them to try and change that behaviour. Okay, so the key features of the Drive model. So as you can see there, it's intensive case management. And this is what really helps our guys. They have a lot of continuity, so we can keep engaging with these people up to 12 months. So, you know, it does give you that time to build that rapport and that kind of bond, so you can do real significant work. We also work, obviously, integrally with all our partners, as I said earlier. So the coordinated the holistic approach, and that's what was really integral to this model, is we have got to try and support these people to change their behaviour. I remember working with a young gentleman who was given a sentence, and he had to do a perpetrator behaviour course, and he would tell me that he's living under a bridge, and by his own admission, what he said to me was, I have got bigger fish to fry at the moment because I'm living under a bridge. Yes, I want to change my behaviour, but I got to make sure that I'm safe. So that is what the Drive model does as well. We work with our partners to try and support them and remove them barriers, because we do see a lot of our service users who will try and make excuses for their behaviour, and those who do want to change, but they haven't got the tools and the ability to change. So we will work with them in a multi-agency, one-to-one intensive way, and then we can see if we want these people to change, if we want to strive for that sustainable attitudinal and behavioural change, we have got to make sure that we lay the foundations first. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of need, some of our guys haven't even got the basic physiological needs met. And if we want them to come halfway up that triangle, we have got to work with them to kind of get them basic needs met. So, okay, so as it says there, in 2016, the pilot began, and it was a 3-year pilot. It worked really, really well, and it worked exceptionally well in the valleys. So the South Wales valleys, where we are, it worked really, really well. But we wanted to test it if it would work in a metropolis like Cardiff, so a big city centre with many suburbs. We wanted to see if that would kind of work there. We rolled it out into Cardiff, and it worked really, really well. Now we're up to, as I said earlier, we're up to everywhere in South Wales Police Force area. And that is, I think we're working with 7 local authorities. So multi-agency, when we say multi-agency partnerships, it's just a list of the people that works with Drive. So I've introduced myself, obviously, the service manager. Paula has done hers as well. The role of the IDVA, yes, okay, we've briefly gone over that. But additional benefits of the IDVA is it ensures that our case decisions are involved by the IDVA's knowledge of the case and that knowledge of the victim's reality, and that is really, really important. What we don't want to be doing is putting the victim's safety at risk through unintended consequences of what we are doing. So as I said, yes, we work with the police. Our working relationship with South Wales Police is second to none. We have that expeditious information sharing, instantaneous enforcement, and we also do that as well with our colleagues in HMPPS, which is Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Services. What we've seen over the last number of years, 5 years, is that some of our guys who come to us, they've got a massive checkered history and a past of domestic violence, and most of them are in an absolute chaotic situation. Now, most agencies weren't equipped to deal with that, and we weren't when we first started, but as we've evolved and moved on, we now got access to forensic psychology clinics. This allows us to tap into those people who ordinarily, what would happen is probably 3 outcomes for them. They would probably murder their partner and go to jail for life. Their partner would probably murder them by violent resistance, or they would take their own life. Now we are able to tap into these people and to try and get a sustainable attitudinal and behavioural change. So this is the amount of people that we've worked with. So 793 service users we work with, and you will see there 879 victims. And yes, there is a difference there, and the reason for that difference is because when we are working with our service users and we are kind of building up that rapport with them, because we are a third sector organisation, so Safer Merthyr Tydfil, We are a registered charity, and our service users really respond well to that, because we're not the police, we're not probation, we're not statutory agency. Although we share information expeditiously with all agencies, they seem to work with us a lot better. And then we are finding that there is a new victim or a previous partner, or he's gone into a new relationship, then of course then we will do what we can to safeguard that victim and the women, the children. So okay, so you'll see this is a snapshot of service user needs. So the commonest, the most prevalent need that we see with our guys, and this is the ones that are really kind of chaotic, is mental health and physiological well-being, psychological well-being, sorry, and alcohol and substance misuse. So these kind of go hand in hand. And what we see on a regular basis is there are underlying mental health conditions with quite a lot of our service users. And what they do is they've stopped going to their mental health appointments. So what they're doing to try and suppress these thoughts and feelings and attitudes, what they're doing is they're turning to substance misuse. And we all know that is the toxic trio. So that's mental health, substance misuse, and domestic violence. So what we do is we will work with these people to try and mitigate the risk. So we will take them to those mental health appointments. We will advocate for them with housing. Housing is another big issue that we see on a regular basis. And what we see, especially in South Wales and Drive as a whole, is that our service users will subjugate their partner and use housing as a tool. So they will say, I've got nowhere to live, I've got no money, and I may as well kill myself. So what we will do in this position is we will work with that person to support him. So we will support him to get housing and to get his own financial autonomy. And what that does is that removes the excuses that he is just, I say he, as obviously is 98%, but I'll just say he. So what we are doing is we are removing that excuse as well. And by our work with the IDVA is able to report back to the victim and say, well, actually, he has got a flat. Actually, he has got a live claim for benefits. So what happens then is that victim is in a much better position to make that informed choice whether she wants to resume the relationship. Okay, so again, this is a snapshot, and you will see there that the more prolific kind of people that we work with, between 21 and 39, and that is across all sites. That's not just South Wales, that's across all sites. But what you will also see as well is the low ages. So we've got 16, 17s, and we've got 18 to 20. And what we seem to do with the people we work with at this age, they've probably got another 40 to 50 years to perpetrate. So what we need to be doing is we need to be getting into at that particular moment and trying to change that psyche. Because what we see, especially in the Valley, is we see generations of abuse. So we have had cases where we know the person that we've got in front of us, he has been known to courts for domestic violence, his dad before him, and we already know through our marks that this gentleman's son is already coming to the notice of domestic violence agencies. So by us trying to do that intervention, especially with the younger element, we are trying to give them that lifelong learning opportunity to change. Okay, so there was an independent evaluation, and we are going to give, so we have given you this in your packs for you to have a look at. So you will see there that there's two links. There's the executive summary, which is, I think, is 16 pages, and there's the full report. But if you see the on the right hand side there, some of these figures are actually remarkable. So this was the biggest perpetrator evaluation in Europe. I think it may be the world, but I know it's definitely in Europe. And these are the kind of reductions of abuse that we are seeing. 82% physical abuse reduced, 88% sexual abuse, 75 harassment and stalking, and 73 jealous and controlling behaviour. So one thing as well, which really stood out to me when I read this report, there is a cost-benefit analysis in there. And for a family to go to MARAC, which again is the multi-agency risk assessment conference, and all the acquired cost for that, we are talking in the region of £60,000 to £62,000. So as I said when we opened the presentation, some of the service users that we work with have got 3 or 4 different victims that have been to MARAC. So, you know, that is so much money to the public purse. And again, when you're talking 16 to 20-year-olds, you know, as I said, they've got another 40 years to perpetrate. So the cost of coming onto the Drive project is between £1,800 and £2,000. So again, your cost-benefit analysis will say that you know this is the right way of working. So yeah, which kind of leads on to that. I'm not going to go into this in real great detail because you can kind of read it yourself there. And so the key success factors. So the setup, the service launch, and the service delivery. I think for me, the success factors that we've had here is this is a different type of way of working with service users. And we are seeing that long-lasting, sustainable behavioural and attitudinal change, and that's not just with us, but that's with that's with all the agencies that we work with as well. And what we are seeing is there is a shift. There's been a seismic shift to people and other professionals thinking about the victim in all this, and the victim's voice, because that is integral to the Drive project, and that's why we are so successful. So here's some feedback from victims and survivors. I'm not going to, I'll just leave you read that for a second. But this one there that says, for the first time, someone's holding him to account. It's not just me. That is typical of what we see and what we hear, and what we do see, especially with child protection conferences and subsequent reviews and core groups, is that the victim is much more likely to speak out and to say, actually, someone's believing me, so I am gonna, you know, I have got a voice. And of course, that is so important, and that's what we want to hear, because the most dangerous part of our job is if the perpetrator and the victim kind of go underground. So they will do what they got to do to get statutory agencies off their back, and that is a real difficult time for us, and dangerous time, because the victim will tend not to report. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go through 2 case studies with you. So these are actually my cases when I was a case manager. So this one, this guy I met, so he was 32, the victim was 31. They were engaged, they were a relationship for 14 years, 2 children, 2 little girls. There was a minimum offending profile, 3 public protection notices were generated. The types of abuse and behaviours were, there was quite a lot of physical violence. There was a lot of punching, a lot of pushing, a lot of pulling hair. There was a lot of emotional abuse. So what he would do was he would publicly humiliate his partner when they went out for meals or with other couples. There was a lot of controlling behaviour. So what he would do is he would check up on his victim. He would phone 40 to 50 times a day. He would say, like, where are you? I wanted to take a photo of you in the house. I want you to ping the microwave. So she literally had to go into the kitchen and ping the microwave so he would know that she was actually in the house. I'm not sure how he knew what his own microwave sounded like, but it was constant. He would he would police the victim's social media, and he'd look at the children's social media. He would also try and question the children. So he would ask the children, has mum talked to anybody when he went to school today, or on your way back? Have she talked to anybody? Extremely jealous and possessive. So the first appointment I had with this gentleman was in a child protection conference, and that worked really, really well. So I met him beforehand with a social worker, and we went through the reports. Of course, he was the best dad in the world, and his children went on 3 to 4 holidays a year, and he worked 6 days a week, and they never wanted for anything. So there's loads of denial, minimization, and blame. I started to build up the rapport with him just before the conference, because I said to him, I'm going to be sitting next to you, and I give him a kind of an overview of what he could expect. And that really did set the tone for us working together. He started working with me through gritted teeth at first, because, you know, it wasn't his fault and it's all blown out of proportion. But we dealt with that. And in the subsequent work that we did together, we looked at vulnerabilities where he would never say that he was vulnerable. We looked at the timeline of him and what his family looked like. And, you know, he would tell me that his dad is a respected member of the community, and he was an ex-miner. And then as things would go on, he would tell me about certain times when he was 6 and 7 that a significant abusive incident happened. So, you know, we could kind of go into that. We looked at the cycle of abuse. We looked at the types of abuse. So what he thought was abuse was physical. So we went all through the emotional. What he was doing as well, there was a lot of financial abuse. So this is a guy that was bringing home £1,000 a week. But what he would do, he would give his partner £100 a week, and she had to account for every single penny that she spent. So there was no financial autonomy there for her at all. So we looked at, I think the key with this guy is, and what we do see with a lot of our service users, is there's very little empathy for the victim, but there's a lot of empathy for the children. So we were able to work on the ACEs, which is the adverse childhood experiences, and this really unlocked him, and it kind of gave him an overview of what he was doing to perpetuate their kind of or the potential for them having trauma. He responded very well to exercises with me. So the one that sticks out is the good dog, bad dog. So he would always feed his bad dog. He would phone his partner and she wouldn't answer. He would phone another 10 times, but then he would feed his bad dog. Where is she? She's with somebody else. What is she doing? Where, you know, when we rationalized it and broke it down, where do you think she was on a Thursday at 3:30? She's probably with the children in school. So that, you know, that really helped him. There was a couple of other exercises we done. One was the iceberg exercise, where he would tell me that his youngest daughter, the 7-year-old, he would say, we don't hear from her. She comes in the house, she goes upstairs, she's very quiet. And I was explaining to him, as a domestic violence professional, how dangerous and what a red flag that was to us. So we did the iceberg exercise, where the iceberg is coming out of the water, and it's all pretty and lovely and nature, but it's underneath where all the danger is. And that visualization was enough to really spark him into the cycle of change. All our guys, most of our guys come in, I'd say 99% come in on pre-contemplation. So we need to get them into contemplation of their behavior and then into action. And it worked really well with this man. So that is feedback we had from the social worker. And this isn't just anecdotal of me saying, oh, do you know what, he's really changed, and so obviously there's no collusion between us, but this was an amalgamation as well of all other agencies. When we were in the Child Protection Review Conference, they were able to say, so health were able to say these children hit all their milestones. School were able to say that they're not hurting other children, they're not falling asleep in class. So between us, you know, we did do quite a lot of work together. But of course, you know, ultimately it's him. He was the one that had put this family in this position, and he was held to account. That is what Drive does. We hold perpetrators to account. So case study 2. So within Drive, we have people that we can contact, and we have people where we can't contact because of the risk to the victim. So a typical example is I had a person I was working with where he had systematically broken all the fingers and the thumbs of his partner. She went to hospital and said that she'd slipped and fallen in the snow. Obviously, that wasn't the truth. And so the health visitor, the nurse, she put a referral into our multi-agency risk assessment conference. Now, I could not contact this gentleman at that particular time because he would have known that his partner has spoken to somebody about the breaking of the fingers. Because what happened was, although we tried to stay with her in accident and emergency, they kind of got him out of the room so they were able to speak to her. So the guy I'm going to speak to you about here, he has never heard of Drive, and he knows nothing about me or my colleagues or anything. So what happened here, we couldn't contact him because he was incredibly dangerous. But the IDVA that was working with the victim. So the victim said to the IDVA, he was in prison and yet he was still phoning her. So he phoned her on a number of occasions. And one occasion he phoned her at 10:30 in the night and he said, your windows are going to go through tonight. And her windows were smashed. So the level of subjugation and terror that he had over this victim, he was in prison and he could still command what was going to happen to her. And this was just before there was going to be a trial where he had committed a real nasty assault on the victim. The IDVA disclosed that to us. Now, obviously, we have got to be very, very careful in the information that we share because we don't want it to come back to the victim. So what we did was, we've got a fantastic relationship with all the prisons in South Wales. We contacted the prison and we contacted the security team in particular, and we said, this person has a phone which he shouldn't have, and he's using it to terrify a victim. Maybe victims, but definitely one victim. So what we did was, we asked the security team, please don't go straight to his cell, because they will know he will know that's an information-led kind of search. So what they did was, they went onto the wing where he was housed, and they went on to 6 different cells in that cell block. With the express interest is they wanted to target him, but they didn't want to alert him to the fact that we had this information. What happened was really, really good for us. So they went to his cell. They went into his cell. They found the phone. They found a phone, and they found other SIM cards. And what they found as well was a big bag of drugs. So he was in, ironically, for perverting the course of justice, he was in more trouble than he would have been for the assault. So yeah, so the trial was halted, and he was in custody. I'm not sure. I think he may have been out in November last year, but I know that it was a significant kind of sentence that he had. So this is just a bit of a narrative for and so this is one of our Drive partners. Explicit partnership work like this is quite new for the sector. We do occasional joint statements or joint meetings with officials, but this feels different. it's a more developed way of working together, and it's the first time it's happened in relation to work with perpetrators. And I leave you read that. So this was from Chief Inspector Lisa Gore, who couldn't be with us today because of illness, but she is the Drive Fellow, and we have worked so well together. It's been really good. Okay, so that's the presentation. I don't know if there's been any questions as I've been talking, or is there any questions now? No?
Perhaps I can just come into the conversation. We're conscious that there's potentially a lot of information in relation to Drive and how that's changed the way we work in South Wales Police Force area. We've tried to upload as much information as we can in terms of some of that detail for people, but it is quite an unusual, and certainly in our, I suppose in England and Wales, a new way of working with perpetrators. And certainly we've seen a real big shift in, I suppose, the attitudes that people hold in relation to perpetrators. We're starting to have conversations around what perpetrators need in order to enable them to be ready and receptive to behaviour change, rather than just sort of like railroading people into mandatory programs, which don't always have the desired outcomes for people. So we've seen a lot of positive system change. It's enabled us, I think, to look at other aspects of perpetrator work in a way that we wouldn't have done before. And it's really sort of strengthened our relationships with other partners. And I think it said in Lisa's quote at the end, Chief Inspector Lisa Gore was saying about, it's really turned the conversation on its head from why doesn't she leave to why doesn't he stop? And I think that's probably a massive culture shift across all of the partners that we work with. So I just think when I look back to when we first implemented Drive, so in 2016, there was a lot of suspicion, there was a lot of caution, and rightly so, because it was something that nobody had ever really attempted to do before. And there was that whole sort of like focus really on recognizing that there were barriers for perpetrators in order that they could change their behaviors. But the most significant thing I think that it's done is it's shown the importance of that sort of independent advocate who's supporting victims to be working alongside those services, offering support and interventions for perpetrators, and the importance of that communication in increasing victim safety and reducing the repeat victimization. And I think if people are genuinely interested in having a look at the evaluation from Bristol University, I think that was a real sort of turning point for us in South Wales Police Force area, because we went from trialing and testing, as Darren said, in one particular area to testing replication in a much more built up city environment, to being able to roll that out across our whole police force area. And we went, I'm smiling now, I don't know if anyone can see me, but we went from the first site where there was a lot of resistance and definitely suspicion. And by the time we were rolling out Drive into the final areas across force, preparing this time last year actually to do that, it was a completely different story. People were really keen and welcoming, and excited about bringing such an intervention to the broader area. So it was a real, for me, as someone who's been involved over the last 5 years, it's been a real insightful learning curve for me around how we can actually work with perpetrators and generate some positive results for victims and some positive results for perpetrators. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I was probably one of the biggest skeptics in the beginning, coming from the women's sector. I was sort of a bit wary, but I think we've really been able to demonstrate the benefits. And we did some really interesting work with our partners from HMPPS and probation, other offender management organisations, where we looked at Drive and we looked at how that was being delivered, and we looked for ways that we could develop the work that was going on. And I think one of the biggest sort of benefits of doing that was it really gave people confidence in the intervention as a whole, but introduced us to the opportunity to work much more closely with the forensic psychology department in terms of helping us to, I suppose, work through some of the challenges around there's not one way to work with a perpetrator. We have to have more than one tool in our box, and that sometimes you run the risk of thinking that you're taking the right approach with somebody, and actually inadvertently you could be reinforcing some of that behavior and those thoughts. So being able to work with the psychology team has been really helpful in terms of, I suppose, strengthening insight and understanding and the kinds of interventions that you might be able to use. So I just put that on the table, really.
Okay, if there's no questions, thank you very much. If there are questions later on, if you could pass them to Dee Stanford and she can forward them on to us, and we will endeavour to answer the questions and get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Dee, over to you.
All right, thanks, Darren and Paula. If you don't have anything else to add, then I'll end the live stream. And again, attendees, if you have any questions, then you can submit them via the Whova app. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.